It's good. Okay, we'll start officially here. Welcome to Worksheet 36. We're talking about participles today. This is the second half of our conversation. So if you go back to the last couple of videos, and for those of you in person, the last couple of weeks, we were talking about present active. That's our ens entis, right? That's our ing participle. And we did perfect passive, fourth principal part. That's your ed, right? Describing something as thrown or eaten or a person that's been chased, a game that's been played, a work that's been finished, right? The second half of that conversation, we're dealing with future participles, so future active and future passive, right? And they each have, of course, their own translation. So the future active, we are describing someone or something as about to do something. So this would be this would be, and it seems weird to think about in English, but if you're describing somebody who's going to do something, who's gonna do something, you would use this participle. So I'm sitting there on my bed about to fall asleep. That would be a situation where you would use this participle. So you're about to verb. We've talked about in class going to, gonna, finna, ama, all great ways in English to translate this participle. When you say I'ma head out and you put your hands on the I'm bowta, yep, these are all different ways that we express the same idea in English. So while you may not say to a friend, "Oh, are you about to leave?" Right? Which is a perfectly fine thing to say in English, but perhaps you say, "Are you going to leave?" "Are you about to leave?" All the same. To make this participle very easy, we're going to start with our fourth principal part, whatever that fourth principal part happens to be. So for laudare, it's laudatus, and we add in this extra syllable, this UR, right, in front of it. So I think I can zoom in a little bit here. So the fourth principal part being laudatus, to make it, oh gosh, this still says present active. Oh no! Ooh, that's rough. That's rough. You saw nothing. Okay? My apologies there. I know it's on the worksheets. We'll have to make that adjustment. I can do it on the Google Drive one, but I think we'll be okay. If you're reading that carefully, you're probably okay. So the future active participle, we add in this UR in front of the us. So for moere, fourth principal part is motus, so it becomes moturus. Scriptus becomes scripturus. Factus becomes facturus. Auditus becomes auditurus. And again, the translation, about to do something. And it is active, right? So you're describing that person as about to praise, about to write, about to do. Not passive, right? That must be active for this one. Conjugation doesn't matter. Just use the correct fourth principal part, right? The last participle, the future passive participle, it is made now. We're going to go back to the present stem. So we're going to go back to the first couple of principal parts, laudo, laudare, right? We're going to take that stem, lauda, for a first conjugation verb, or moa for a second conjugation verb. We're going to add ndus. So we get endus, enda, endum. So something that you describe as laudandus or moendus, this future passive participle, has a very unique translation. It is must be done. So something that's laudandus must be praised, right? Moendus means it must be moved. Scribendus must be written. It can sometimes mean about to be, but for the Romans, if they wanted to say that, something is about to be done, they would just do it in the active. And they would just say that so-and-so is about to do X, Y, and Z. So when you have active or passives and you really have one active, the Deus laudandus, the God that must be praised. That is an excellent example, Rowan. When you're used to saying one thing in the active and saying a different thing in the passive, It's just how you form your thoughts. You're not sitting there going, oh man, I wish I could say this in the active. You just don't think like that because your language doesn't do that, doesn't have those capabilities. So no Roman is running around, mourning the loss of a way to say X, Y, and Z. You just don't think about these things. Because we're dealing with the first and second principal parts and conjugation is going to matter, be careful with your IO verbs, your third IO and fourth, because facio is going to be faciendos, and audio is going to be audiendos. So it's the same vowel pattern that we had with the ens entis, right? We had ons ontis, ains entis, and eanes entis. So A, E, or IE. Those are your options, okay? And as I said to most of my classes, in English, we love these. We love these. And I use some examples. We talked about Amanda, right? The girl who must be loved. We talked about a legend, which is a story that must be read. We talked about the agenda, which is the list of things that must be done. I think we talked about the reverend, the guy who must be revered, must be looked up to. And I mentioned this in my classes today. I don't think I remembered to do this in my classes yesterday. But math, let's go math, has a ton of terms that are based on this form. And I'm going to throw the ones that I can think of in here. So in math, you have addends, right? Those are the two numbers that must be added together. The subtrahend in a subtraction problem is the number that must be subtracted. So 8 minus 3, 3 is the subtrahend. It must be subtracted. 8 is the minuend. It must be diminished. It must be made smaller. So the big number in subtraction, usually a big number, is the minuend. The number that you're taking away from it is the subtrahend. Dividend is the thing that must be divided. So 10 into 100. 100 is the dividend. It must be divided up. And the same thing too, if you know from financial stuff, right? It's the dividend is like when a company makes a whole bunch of money, and they have to divvy it out to all of their people who work there. That's called a dividend. Everybody gets a little share. There you go. Comprehend comes from comprehendo. So that's actually just the stem of the verb. I know it's got the nd. It's like defendo, right? Defend doesn't mean must be defended. Defendendos or defendenda, where you add in another nd, then it means must be. So sometimes verbs just have an nd in the stem, but it has to be an additional nd that you've added. Comprehendendus would be something that must be understood. It can also mean must be grabbed, right? Comprehendo can also mean to grab. All right, enough of the preamble. Let's actually get in here, get our hands dirty. So we're just making these participles real quick. Look at this. Excellent. So for clamo, fourth principal part, we have clamaturus, which means about to shout. Excellent. So that's from the fourth principal part. And then clamandus is something that must be shouted. Fantastic. I'll keep it zoomed in. I think you guys get the interficio. Nicely done. Yeah, keep them coming. So we have interfecturus. That is someone who is about to kill. And interficiendus is something that must be killed. Okay. Now I'm just defaulting to the masculine singular, but remember these are all us, a, So octurus for something masculine, octura something feminine, octurum something neuter. Just going with the shorthand. So ferio is to strike, right? So fourth principal part. Feriturus, someone or something about to strike. And then feriendus, something that must be struck. For tereo, terere, fourth principal part, teritus, teriturus. That is someone who is about to scare someone. And then terendus is someone or something that must be scared. Chat, blowing it up, blowing it up. Well done. Hey, Grace. So for compono, we have compositurus, someone who's about to compose, about to put together. And then componendus is something that must be put together. And then finally, coquo. I know you guys are way faster than me in the chat here. Cocturus, someone who is about to cook. And coquendus, something that must be cooked. So again, this one comes from the fourth principal part. This one comes from the first and second. And when we get down to this section, you'll see putting them all together, sometimes seeing them all in one place, it's just a nice visual to help you remember. So pelanes, right, that's my present active, pushing. Pulsus, pushed. Pulsurus, about to push. Pelendus, must be pushed. So the first one and the last one actually look pretty similar to each other. They're based on the same stem, you use the same principal parts. And then pulsus and pulsurus, obviously based on the same. You're very close there, Rowan. Just watch out for the vowels, right? So for feminine, we're going to make them all feminine singular. So my first participle here, my formatting. Let's go 14 here. And put this. I'm going to do a quick thing of formatting here. Just don't mind me, guys. Okay. All right. So first participle, we take off the re, so we get para, and we get parans, right? And that is someone or something preparing, ing. That one, because it's one termination, feminine singular doesn't really matter, right? Parans is masculine, it's feminine, it's neuter. It's the other ones where the gender is going to affect the ending a little bit more. Perfect passive is the fourth principal part, so parata, that's someone or something that's been prepared. Paratura is someone or something that is about to prepare. And then here's where you got to be careful, Rowan. Parenda is a different verb. Parenda means must be obeyed from pareo. So one little letter changes quite a bit. So we want to make sure we keep that A. Parens, parentis? Is that where we get parent from? Does it come from obey? I think it comes from pario? Parent would be obeying, right? The ing. So we just wanted paranda. One R. Watch out for the autocorrect here, guys. It's going to try to put two R's on you. Paranda is must be prepared. The etymology of parent. Let's see. Parents is parere, to give birth. So not to obey. So many verbs that are real similar. So let's see what you got there, Rowan. So we're going for feminine plural. So the only one to watch out for is that first one. Yeah, the verb parentem, right, would be describing somebody giving birth. So that is a parent, right? Parent is the person giving birth. Be careful, Rowan, with the first participle, because if we look at just the standard form that we make, right? We take off the RE, we get tenanes, right? Oops. That's the singular. Because this participle is tenanes tenentis, when I go to make it plural, it becomes tenentes, right? It uses the third declension. It's the only one that uses the third declension endings. So people who are holding something would be tenentes. Those are the people holding something or having something. Teneo can also be to have. So it's going to use a different declension than the others. Now when you get to these other guys, tentai, right, it's going to use the AE, first declension, feminine plural, let's go. Tentai is, those are things that are held, or people that are held. Tenturai, people who are about to hold something. And then tenendai are things that must be held. So you'll notice when you look at the endings, the first participle, the ing participle, is always the odd one out. It is always going to have a different ending than the other ones. This is going to use the third declension plural, ace. If it were neuter plural, it would be ia. This is going to use, because it's feminine, it's going to use those first declension AEs. Right? That's looking pretty close, Rowan, for our next one. Just gotta be careful. It's, boy, Latin is a game of inches. The verb is iaccio. So iacenes is a different verb. Iacenes from iaceo means to lie, as in like to lie next to something. So iacenes is lying next door, which is why adjacent, something that is adjacent, is lying next to something else. But for this verb, because it's iaccio, we want iacienes. Iacienes. And that is someone who is throwing something. And since it's neuter singular, we don't have to do anything. Our work is done. This one does not exist. This one does not exist. We put X's in those boxes. And now all the other ones, just be careful of that last one again, Rowan. So iactum is something that's been thrown. I always say that word, so weird. Thrown. I always like do a weird thing with my mouth. Iactum is thrown. Iacturum is someone who's about to throw something. I know. And then, because it's iaccio, Rowan, iaciendum. That's something that must be thrown. So that IO is going to come into play here, and it's going to come into play here. These two, we don't worry about it because they're based on the fourth principal part, so they're good. It's the first one and the last one that are based on 1 and 2 here. And then last one here, we've got terreo, so we're looking for neuter plurals this time. So again, we'll go through the motions just so you can see, because that first one's got some different endings to it, right? Oh, you're so close! You're so close. So this participle, if we just did the singular, would be terranes, right? The genitive would be terrentis. To make it neuter plural, you're right with the A, right? You've got the but don't forget, these are third declension. So it's not terrenta, it's terrentia. It's going to use the extra I as well. So terrentia means scaring. Those are neuter plural things that are scaring someone. Yeet could have come from yaktare. Interesting, yeah, because that ya, right? I am not a scholar to know. I mean, I know where yeet came from. I don't think etymologically it's too grounded. But I like the idea of yeet coming from yaktare. We're going to go with that. To yeet it across the room. We'll say it comes from yaktare. And yaktare can also mean it can be used to boast or to have swagger. So I like to think there's some connection there. If you yeet something, you got some swag. This one here, as all your other participles look good, Rowan. Terita. These are neuter plural things that have been scared. Teritura. Those things are about to scare. And then last one, we go back to the present stem. So we have terenda. And those are things that must be scared. So again, Rowan, this one's got an A, second neuter, second neuter, second neuter. But because that's third, it's going to have the IA. So that first one is always the odd one out. It is always going to have a different ending than the others. All right, any questions about any of this stuff before we take off? And I'll be streaming live again in a couple minutes. I'm going to grab some water, but then I'm going to do some poetry for my big kids. And there's a perfect passive participle, I think, in today's section. So you'll get to see participles in action if you have not gotten enough of your participle fill. And I will... Am I going to make those... I already told everybody to print out the worksheet. I'll make the correction on the Google form, on the Google Drive version. I don't think I'm going to make the correction on the PDFs. I think we'll be okay. I'll mention it in class tomorrow. All right, kiddos. Thanks for coming. Again, I'll be back in a couple minutes with something completely different. But thank you, guys. Excellent work today, Rowan. Really, seriously. Good job. Bye, guys.